This video will provide an intro to graphing. As a reminder, these are intended to be watched in full and in order, so go back and watch those that came before. The video that was right before this was standard deviations and PACE special. The last thing we'll cover over the remaining videos is graphing. There are many types of graphs you can generate. The main ones you'll come across are column or bar graphs, scatter plots, line graphs, and pie charts. You can use this graphic to help you decide which graph type is best for you to use and your desired outcomes. You first have to ask, what do you want to show with your graph? But with that is the type of data you have. Qualitative, as in words, or quantitative, as in numbers. If you're looking for a comparison between or among groups, you can do it either among or within groups as they currently stand. This can use qualitative characteristics in combination with numerical values or all numerical. For example, how does food production differ between countries? This is a comparison among groups. You can have categories or values on the x-axis, and you can include standard error of any kind like error bars, which we'll go over in a minute. The other comparison is over time. This is inherently quantitative. Since time, the x-axis, is numerical. You can view it with either a line or a bar graph. For example, how does the average rainfall change by month in New Mexico compared to Florida? If you want to look at a relationship, you have to have quantitative data because both the x and y axes require numerical values. For example, the relationship between size and heat loss. To look at the distribution of values, you need quantitative data, and you can do either a column graph or a scatter plot. For example, the number of people each year to use social media. Lastly, for composition of something, you can look at it as a single point in time with a snapshot, which will usually have quantitative data for qualitative categories, and you can use either stacked bar graph or pie charts. But if you want to see a change of a composition over time, then an area graph or stacked bar graphs are best. For example, what is the composition of transportation for UNM students? What percentage use bikes, cars, buses, and other forms of transportation? Now you're ready to start making graphs. For our purposes, we will work on creating two different types of graphs. We'll cover how to create bar graphs with error bars and scatter plots with trend lines, but I encourage you to play with the other options on your own. Let's start with column or bar graphs. The first step in graphing is to determine the type of graph you need to use. To do this, first ask yourself what you want to graph or you want the chart to say. Also, what type of data do you have? Is it qualitative categories or quantitative numbers? After you know that, you can determine what type of graph is most appropriate for your need. So let's go back to our graphic. If our first graph, we want to compare measurements between groups, that's a comparison. Then we'll do a bar or column graph because we want to include the categories of measurements. There are a few other things you need to know before you can actually graph it. So now that we know the type of graph, we need to decide what groups we want to represent. Excel calls these series. So what could be an option? In this case, we'll use Sex1 and Sex2. So those are our two different groups. Next, we need to know what our x-axis categories are. And remember, these can be numerical values or categories because we are again using a column graph for a comparison. So what could they be? In this case, we'll use the body parts that we measured. The next video you should watch is going to be related to column or bar graphs, more specifically, the functions of how to do it.